Only one story around, isn't there? So Keir Starmer under pressure tonight to strip the British citizenship of the anti-white racist Jew hater Alaa Abdel Fata, the activist he welcomed into Britain at the weekend. In a nod to Lucy Connolly, the mother sentenced to 2.5 years under this government for a hastily written and quickly deleted tweet after the Southport riots, Reform UK's Zia Youssef, I argue, hit the nail on the head today by posting this on X. He said,
"There is only one story dominating Britain right now, and it isn't about immigration, inflation, or foreign policy. It's about power, hypocrisy, and whether justice in Britain still means the same thing for everyone. Under Starmer's leadership, the country is being forced to confront an uncomfortable question. Are there now two sets of rules, one for ordinary people and another for those protected by the right political narrative? Because when you place two cases side by side, the contrast is not just disturbing, it is impossible to ignore. On one side, Lucy Connolly, a mother sentenced to 2.5 years in prison for a hastily written tweet posted in a moment of emotional distress and deleted shortly afterward. On the other, Alaa Abdel Fata, an activist openly welcomed back into Britain, celebrated by politicians, despite a long digital record of tweets glorifying violence, calling for the killing of whites and Jews, and celebrating death. This isn't a gray area. This isn't a misunderstanding. This is the system revealing exactly how it now works. Keir Starmer's government wants the public to believe this was an unfortunate administrative failure, a breakdown in information, a missed background check, an innocent oversight. But when the Prime Minister himself becomes part of the story, those excuses collapse. Abdel Fata was not an unknown figure. His tweets weren't buried in some forgotten corner of the internet. They were public, explicit, and widely circulated for over a decade. Statements like killing colonialists is heroic. Random shootings of white males should convince them racism costs lives. And I rejoice when Zionists are killed were not isolated slips of the tongue. They were ideological declarations. And yet, despite this record, Britain under Starmer didn't just allow him entry. It granted him legitimacy, citizenship, protection, applause. The message this sends is chilling. Words can destroy your life or they can be forgiven, entirely depending on who you are and what politics you serve. What makes this scandal impossible to brush aside is not simply what Abdel Fata said, but how differently the law responded to others. Lucy Connolly's apology meant nothing. The speed with which she deleted her tweet didn't matter. Her lack of prior offenses didn't matter. Her emotional state didn't matter. The state made an example of her, and she is not alone. Hundreds of ordinary people have faced prosecution, prison sentences, and permanent public shaming for online speech during moments of national tension. The justification has always been the same: public safety, zero tolerance, consequences for harmful words. But suddenly, under Starmer, those principles appear flexible. Suddenly, apologies are enough. Suddenly, context matters. Suddenly, free speech is rediscovered, but only for some. This is why the public anger refuses to die down. Because this isn't about left versus right or Labour versus Conservative. It's about trust. Trust that the law is applied evenly. Trust that citizenship is earned, not gifted to those whose ideology aligns with the cultural elite. Trust that the Prime Minister understands the difference between forgiveness and recklessness. When Starmer stands behind phrases like information failure, he isn't calming the situation, he's inflaming it. Because leadership doesn't get to outsource responsibility. When the state destroys one life for a tweet and rewards another person with citizenship for far worse rhetoric, people don't see fairness. They see a system that has chosen sides. And once that perception sets in, restoring faith becomes almost impossible. The defense, now being pushed by Keir Starmer's office, is carefully worded but deeply revealing. We are told there was an information failure that somehow, somewhere the system failed to flag Alaa Abdel Fattah's history before he was welcomed back into Britain. But this explanation collapses the moment you examine the facts. Abdel Fattah was never an obscure figure. He was described repeatedly, including by senior politicians, as a political prisoner, jailed in Egypt for his online writings. That alone raises the most obvious question any competent government should ask. What exactly did he write online? You cannot simultaneously claim awareness of someone's imprisonment for social media activity and ignorance of the content of that activity. Those two claims cannot logically coexist. And yet, that is precisely what the Prime Minister is now asking the public to believe. There's also a documented trail that makes the ignorance claim even harder to defend. Parliamentary debates, public interviews, and archived footage show that Keir Starmer was aware of Abdel Fattah's status years ago. Not only that, but in 2014, Abdel Fattah was stripped of a humanitarian-style award after his old tweets resurfaced. The very same tweets causing outrage today. This was not secret intelligence. It was publicly available information that journalists, activists, and organizations had already flagged long before his return to the UK, which leads to an unavoidable conclusion. Either Starmer's government failed to conduct even the most basic due diligence, or it knew and chose to proceed anyway. Neither explanation inspires confidence in a prime minister tasked with safeguarding public trust and national cohesion. What deepens the controversy is the selective nature of enforcement. Under Starmer's leadership, time and again we are told that online speech is dangerous, that it fuels hatred, that it must be policed strictly for the safety of society. That principle has been applied ruthlessly to ordinary citizens, people with no platforms, no influence, and no institutional protection have been prosecuted, imprisoned, and publicly destroyed for comments written during moments of anger, grief, or fear. Context is routinely dismissed. Apologies are deemed insufficient. Intent is ignored. Yet in Abdel Fattah's case, context suddenly becomes central. His apology, and described by critics as carefully worded and minimal, is treated as closure. The same system that shows zero mercy to some displays remarkable generosity to others. Starmer's response has not helped calm these concerns. By framing the issue as a procedural breakdown rather than a leadership failure, he appears to be distancing himself from responsibility. But leadership does not work that way. When decisions flow upward, accountability flows upward too. A prime minister does not get to claim ignorance when the consequences are this severe and the evidence this visible. The phrase information failure may sound technical, but to the public,